The rain had turned to a fine mist that clung to the cobblestones and blurred the glow of the gas lamps along Fleet Street. Clara Hayes hunched her shoulders, the collar of her wool coat pulled high against the cold. Her umbrella had collapsed an hour ago in a gust that seemed to scream against the very idea of permanence, and she'd long since stopped trying to stay dry. In her leather satchel nestled a half-translated bundle of letters from the Victorian era, pages stained with ink and longing. Her fingers itched to work through them again, but time never felt like her own anymore. Not since the letters began to talk back. She turned down a narrow alley, drawn more by instinct than intention, and came to a stop before a shop she didn't recognize. Elliot's Oddities. The window was a dust-fogged display of clocks, quills, marionettes, and taxidermied creatures. One clock, gold and gleaming despite the grime around it, ticked in perfect rhythm. Beneath it, the tiniest plaque read, "Time waits for no one except you." Clara stepped inside. A small bell chimed, not with a jingle, but a low, resonant tone that made her chest tighten. The warmth of the shop was immediate and smelled of oiled wood, leather, and lavender. 1,000 trinkets surrounded her, stacked on shelves, hanging from beams. At the far end of the counter stood a man in a wine-colored vest and round spectacles, polishing a brass telescope. "Ah," he said without looking up. "You've finally arrived." Clara froze. "Excuse me." The man looked up then. His eyes impossibly gray, like ash and cloud and moonlight all at once. "Miss Hayes, isn't it?" She took a step forward. "Do I know you?" "Not yet. But you will." "I have something that belongs to you." Before she could question him further, he turned and walked into a back room. Curiosity and the strangely magnetic pull of his presence overrode every rational part of her mind, and she followed. The back room was darker, cozier, filled with tools, magnifying glasses, and broken clock parts. The man reached beneath a velvet cloth and withdrew a pocket watch. It was silver, oval rather than round, and so finely etched it might have been made by angels. He held it out. "This," he said, "was meant for your hands." Clara took it, and the moment her fingers closed around the metal, the world tilted. Flash. Sound like air being torn. A scent of rosewood and smoke. Her breath caught. Her vision blurred and then. Cobblestone Street. A man in a waistcoat with hair like polished mahogany. His eyes locked with hers. "Find me before the clock stops," he whispered. And then she was back, gasping, the watch still in her palm, ticking now. "What?" Her voice was ragged. "What was that?" "A memory yet to happen," said the man calmly. "Time is not a straight line. For some it loops. For others it waits." "Who are you?" "Mr. Elliot. This shop finds those it must. And you, Miss Hayes, are about to remember a story the world has forgotten." Clara stepped back, her thoughts a tangle of disbelief and hunger. She turned the watch over. There was an engraving on the back. To which, "Time waits for no one except you." The initials from the letters. "Elias Hawthorne." "This isn't possible," she whispered. Mr. Elliot smiled. "Most important things aren't." Clara left the shop without truly deciding to. She found herself walking the long way home, the watch warm in her palm, ticking still. Her heart was louder. She reached her apartment, bolted the door, and spread the letters on the table like a desperate gambler throwing down a hand. One letter, more worn than the others, bore the date 1851 and a reference to a woman who vanished into fog. "She appeared to me beneath the old ash tree, spoke in riddles, knew the shape of my dreams, then gone like mist at sunrise." That night, Clara dreamed of a clock tower, its face cracked, and a voice calling her name. She woke with the feeling that the past had become porous, that something or someone waited on the other side of time. The next day she returned to the shop. It was gone. Not shuttered. Not relocated. The alley was a solid brick wall, undisturbed and unlabeled. She clutched the watch. Still ticked. A steady beat against the silence of the impossible. In her apartment, she opened her laptop and began searching records again, but this time not for answers. She looked for coordinates. for anything that could take her back. Something inside her insisted the man in the vision was real, that he was waiting, that they had once known each other, and might again. She ran her fingers over the watch, over the initials, and felt a strange certainty settle into her bones. If love could survive letters, could stretch across a century, maybe it could defy time itself. The ticking quickened, just for a moment, like the heartbeat of a secret waking up. The air was thick with a scent of old parchment and musty wood polish as Clara sat hunched in the corner of the London Historical Archives, her fingers stained with ink and time. The letters lay spread before her, now annotated with her own careful handwriting. Every line had begun to feel more like a memory than a discovery. She had combed every record for mentions of Elias Hawthorne and, more importantly, for evidence of the woman he claimed to have seen, the one who vanished like mist. She had been that woman. She knew it now. Knew it with a certainty that burned beneath her skin. The memory, or vision, or hallucination, depending on how much she trusted her own mind, still haunted her. That man's voice. His eyes. The words. "Find me before the clock stops." The pocket watch ticked softly in her coat pocket as if urging her forward. She had begun to carry it everywhere. She checked the back again. To each, "Time waits for no one except you." The initials matched the letters, but the implications were harder to face. She was no longer just researching history. She was a part of it. At midnight, in her apartment, something shifted. The watch glowed faintly. The ticking grew louder, deep and resonant, echoing like a heartbeat. Her vision blurred. The air around her pulsed, cold then warm, and she felt herself falling, folding inward, being pulled through. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in the center of a gaslit street. The fog clung to her boots and curls like memory made manifest. Horse-drawn carriages rattled down the cobblestones. Church bells rang a haunting lullaby in the distance. "No," she whispered. It worked. The world was quieter here, slower. She pressed herself against a brick wall, heart hammering, and caught her breath. People in coats and bonnets passed her by without much notice. A child stared at her strange clothing, but his mother pulled him away. She walked for hours, following instinct and familiarity. London hadn't changed much, structurally. The smell was different, smoke, horse, coal, but the bones of the city were the same. Finally she found it, a public square centered around a crooked ash tree. And there he was, Elias Hawthorne. He stood at the edge of the square, adjusting a peculiar brass device mounted to a wooden tripod. He looked older than in her vision, early 30s perhaps, but no less magnetic. His dark hair curled against his collar, and his fingers moved with precision. Clara hesitated, her breath shallow. Then he looked up. Their eyes met. He blinked, stunned. "It's you," he said. She stepped forward slowly. "Do you remember me?" He nodded, lowering his hands. "I thought I dreamed you." "You didn't. Or maybe you did. I'm not sure how this works." They stared at each other as if trying to memorize the other's face before it vanished again. He motioned to a nearby bench. They sat. "You knew things you shouldn't," Elias said quietly. "About me. About my designs. No one has read them. I never published them. And yet you quoted them." Clara nodded. "I study the past. You were a mystery I couldn't solve. Then the watch found me. And here I am." He touched the device beside him. "This is part of the experiment. I've theorized about time folds, overlapping frequencies of consciousness. But this defies even my most wild hypothesis." Clara hesitated. "Do you want to know what happens to you?" He didn't speak for a long time. Finally he said, "Only if you believe it can be changed." The sky had darkened. They walked together through narrow streets. Their conversation shifted from science to poetry, from time theory to favorite childhood stories. Clara felt herself drawn to him, as if the letters had not just spoken of love, but built it brick by brick in her heart. He brought her to a small workshop, filled with blueprints and inventions, a violin on a stand, and walls lined with journals. He poured her tea, and they sat beside a fire. "I remember now," Elias said. "The moment I saw you vanish. You said my name. You were afraid." Clara looked down. "I didn't mean to leave. The watch pulled me back. I think I have limited time here." His eyes darkened. "Then we must not waste it." She spent 3 days in his time. They studied the device together. She taught him terms from the future. He translated them into Victorian theory. They laughed more than either expected. At night they stood by the window, silent, knowing the hours were numbered. But on the 4th morning, the watch began to tick erratically. Clara knew it was a warning. "I don't want to lose this," she said. "You." Elias took her hand. "Then don't. Stay. If I stay, I could change everything. I could erase you from history or me. Or worse." "We were already erased," he said. "No one believed my work. You're the only one who remembered. Maybe that's the point." She kissed him. The world cracked. A rush of wind. Her vision folded in. She was being pulled back. Elias clutched her hand until the last second. "Find me again," he shouted. "Before the clock." She landed hard on her apartment floor, gasping, the watch sparking in her hand. Everything hurt. Her memories were intact but just barely. She stumbled to her desk, opened the journal, and began to write every word, every detail. She would not let him fade. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "Tick-tock, Clara. You're not the only one who knows." She stared at the screen, then at the watch, then back at the letters. Elias was real. But so was something else. Something that did not want her meddling with time. She looked out the window. The fog was rolling in again. The wind howled against Clara's apartment window as she stood frozen, the mysterious message still glowing on her phone screen. "Tick-tock, Clara. You're not the only one who knows." The words vibrated through her chest, more warning than threat. Someone was watching. Someone knew what she had done. And they didn't want her to do it again. She turned off the phone, stuffed it into a drawer and locked it. Then she opened the window and inhaled the cold night air. The fog below curled through the lamplight like serpents of memory, slithering across the cobblestones of modern London. She didn't have time for fear. Not now. Over the next week, Clara dove deeper into research, rifling through ancient patents, forgotten letters, and obscure diaries. The historical archives had nothing else on Elias, but a hidden collection at the Royal Society mentioned an anonymous inventor who'd submitted papers on temporal displacement, papers that had vanished mysteriously in 1891. Her heart pounded as she realized the year matched the day after she left Elias. The device worked, but someone or something had buried it. Each night the watch pulsed, not ticking, breathing. It had become a living thing, a metronome of longing. Clara would press it against her chest and beg it to open the doorway again. Nothing happened, until the night she found the journal. It wasn't hers. Tucked between the pages of an old science treatise, it bore Elias's handwriting. Her name was scrawled across the inside cover. "Clara, if you're reading this, I found a way." The watch ticked once. She barely had time to grab her coat. The pull was instant. The world spun into itself like smoke pulled into a bottle. A scream froze in her throat as colors blurred into sepia. She landed on a train. Carriages rumbled around her, packed with passengers in Edwardian dress. She blinked, disoriented. An old man gave her a curious look but said nothing. Clara ducked her head and scanned the surroundings. Elias was not here. She disembarked at the next stop, stepping onto a countryside platform. She had no map, no plan. Just the journal in her coat. She opened it. "Go to the place where the sun touches the brass tower." "I'll be there." Brass tower. The old observatory. She walked for hours until the shape of it rose above the hills, the dome glinting gold in the afternoon light. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, but when she reached the top of the hill, her breath caught. He stood there by the gate waiting. Elias looked different. Worn. Tired. His eyes scanned her face with quiet desperation. He stepped forward. "You came back." You brought me back. They embraced as if to seal the moment into reality. He smelled of oil and paper. His heartbeat thundered beneath her cheek. Inside the observatory, time moved strangely. It was a skeleton of copper and glass, filled with maps, telescopes, and curious clocks. One wall bore a mural of constellations that moved when she wasn't looking. They're watching us, Elias said quietly. Who? He pulled a heavy curtain aside, revealing a dark alcove with strange devices glowing faintly blue. Others. Timekeepers. I don't know what they are. They erase interference. They think they're preserving the flow, but it's all control. They've seen what we've done, what we feel. They won't allow it. Clara sat heavily on a bench. Then what do? We disappear from the map, build our own path, one they can't predict. He showed her the modifications he'd made. A way to anchor memories during the fold. A prototype map that could sense temporal interference. They won't let us cross more than 3 times in the same sequence. If we do, they can lock us out, or worse. What happens if they find us? Elias looked away. They erase everything, even the memory, as if we never existed. The air felt colder now. Clara touched his cheek. Then we don't let them. We run faster. Think deeper. We find a way they don't expect. The moment stretched between them, full of pain, fire, and something holy. The next days blurred into one long breath. They worked in tandem, creating their own language of codes and anchors. Clara felt her mind sharpen, her heart open. In this hidden fold of time, she found the version of herself she'd always been seeking. But the clock was not on their side. It happened the night the stars went silent. Elias was mid-sentence, diagramming a new waveform when the sky blinked. The mural on the observatory wall stilled. The stars stopped moving. A shadow crossed the threshold. Not a person, an absence. Distortion. The air hissed around it like static. Elias pushed Clara behind him. The figure stepped forward. It wore no face, only a shimmer of what might have been eyes. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. The pressure in her skull filled her with 1,000 warnings. Elias held out a mirror-like device. The figure froze. Go, he whispered. I'll hold it. No, I'm not leaving you. If you stay, we both vanish. I'll find you again. I promise. The watch in her pocket blazed. Tears spilled down her face. She kissed him hard. Then the fold took her. Back in her apartment she collapsed. This time she screamed. The mirror was gone. The journal too. But the stars outside pulsed in a rhythm she remembered. Something had changed. She looked up at the ceiling. Whispers buzzed faintly from the watch. They're still watching. She crawled to her bookshelf and opened a clean notebook. If memory is the only weapon we have, then I will write us into eternity. The sky outside Clara's window wept rain in steady streams, tapping its rhythm against the glass as though mimicking the pulse of the watch in her palm. She hadn't touched it since that night. Since Elias vanished again. Since the shadow took him. But now it was glowing, softly, persistently, as if reminding her there was more to do. Clara's notebook lay open beside her, filled with line after line of scattered memories, plans, half-finished diagrams, and symbols she didn't remember writing. Some of it was in Elias's hand, some of it hers, and some of it neither. The timekeepers had begun rewriting things. She could feel it. A moment's delay when she tried to recall her mother's voice. A flicker of doubt about the color of her childhood bedroom. Memories smudged like ink in water. If they couldn't erase her completely, they would chip away until there was nothing left to hold on to. But she wasn't going to let them win. She placed the watch on the desk. Around it, she spread the map Elias had given her, the last stable imprint of their crossings. She marked new paths, guessed anchor points. It was dangerous, reckless, the kind of thing Elias would have talked her out of. But he wasn't here. She had to become both of them now. A knock at the door startled her. She moved cautiously, peering through the peephole. No one. She opened it slowly. A box sat on the threshold. Unmarked. Plain. Inside, a letter sealed with wax. A strand of Elias's hair. Her breath caught. She opened the letter with trembling fingers. They're holding me in the between. Memory is the only door. Don't trust the anchors. They've started moving them. You'll need to dive blind. The place where we first lost time, go there. I'll pull you through. The letter disintegrated in her hands. Ran. Through the storm, across soaked cobblestones and blinking traffic lights, until she reached the pier. The wind howled as it had that first night. The first time time slipped and Elias vanished through that impossible fold. Clara stood at the edge and closed her eyes. "Find me," she whispered. The watch pulsed. The air thickened, then ruptured. She was flung sideways through space, her scream caught in a maelstrom of light and sound. Images blurred past her. Elias building something with trembling hands, her own face sleeping beside firelight, the shimmer-eyed timekeepers floating over cities like ghosts of judgment. When she landed, she was underground. The walls were curved, metallic, glowing with embedded light. It smelled of ozone and something burnt. Her limbs ached, her head spun. "Clara!" He turned. Elias stood not 5 feet away, chained at the wrists, eyes haunted but alive. She ran to him. "How do I break it?" "No breaking. Only remembering." "What?" He pressed his forehead to hers. They erased the key. "It's in your mind. A first kiss." The coordinates were hidden in the memory. You need to relive it exactly. Her mind reeled. So much had changed. So much had been tampered with. But she remembered. The smell of grease and ink in his study. The curve of his lips when he teased her about Newtonian paradoxes. The accidental brush of fingers when she handed him a blueprint. That moment thick with unsaid things, when time paused on its own. Their lips touched. The metal cuffs shattered. Lights blared overhead. Sirens. A step. The timekeepers were coming. Elias grabbed her hand and pulled her through the corridor. They moved as one, knowing they couldn't outrun them but might just outthink them. "This way," he shouted. They reached a chamber filled with spherical devices, humming low like 1,000 ticking clocks. Elias knelt before one and opened its core. A reset loop. "We can anchor this one. Leave false echoes in our place." Clara looked at him. "And go where?" "Somewhere they've never mapped. Somewhere they never imagined." She placed her hand on his. "Together. Always." The device activated. Their images fractured, multiplied, twisted into illusions. Footsteps pounded closer, but the door wouldn't open. Time bent around them. One final fold. Clara opened her eyes to sunlight. Real. Warm. They stood in a field beneath a wide blue sky, the brass dome of the observatory far in the distance, but now moss-covered, forgotten, just a ruin. No one had followed. They had won. Elias sat beside her, smiling for the first time in what felt like centuries. "We write our own rules now." She opened her notebook, began to write. Not about danger or fear, but beginnings, and love, and the war they had survived to be free.